I thank Daria and Lilia for their role model of a responsible attitude towards the world and mindfulness. People on the planet have very diverse perspectives: gender, age, cultural context, world outlook, religion, personal and professional experiences. Perceiving these as something that augments rather than divides is truly empowering. This is what we'll talk about in our next session. In this session, we will look at 3 projects to discuss how we can support socially vulnerable audiences to develop a more responsible stance regarding diversity and cultural identity of individuals.
First up in this session is an in-demand speaker, well-known figure in the field of technology and one of 6 Norwegians on the Nordic 100 list. She's the founder of TENK, a technology network for women aiming to inspire women and girls to lean in and contribute to shaping our world's future with technology. Isabelle Ringnes is the co-founder and director of production control of the Equalitycheck.it platform for anonymous workplace equality reviews.
It's a true honor to be speaking to you today at the Global Impact Conference. My name is Isabelle, and I'm the founder and chief product officer of Equalitycheck. I'm from Norway, and my mission in life is to leave this world just a bit more equal than when I got put here. Let me start off by telling you a little bit about my story. Throughout my education and career, I've experienced how unconscious bias and stereotypes subconsciously limit us as individuals. When I studied technology, I was constantly questioned of my presence, and rather than asked about technology, I was asked to get coffee. At my first job, I was jokingly promoted to be the office CNO, the Chief Note-Taking Officer. When I was really nervous on a stage before a big keynote, I got completely tripped up as I was introduced as all of Norway's technology babe when my male colleague was introduced as an expert. These episodes are unconscious bias. Each episode is not detrimental, nor is it traumatizing. It could even be considered funny, but accumulated over time, the effects are real. And at Equalitycheck, we believe that unconscious bias is one of the main reasons as to why leadership has looked the same way for centuries. Because the reality is that in virtually every country, a single man's name is represented more often in leadership than women are, like John is in the US. More than 90% of CEOs in Fortune 500 companies are men. 72% of those are white. Less than 1% is black. But why is this an issue? We're living in a world with volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. The world is moving faster than ever, right in front of our eyes. And if we want to be the companies to lead that change, we need to include people who see the world differently. Less than a century ago, our businesses were largely local and analog, but today, most businesses aspire to be global and digital. 10 years ago, 1.4 billion people were online. Today, more than 4 billion people, more than half the world's population is connected. 2.2 billion people are on Facebook, and 90% of them are outside the US. And that means that our products and our services are no longer tailored to or affecting people in our immediate proximity, but have the potential to engage millions of people and touch billions of lives anywhere in the world. And that means tremendous opportunity. But it also requires us to think differently and learn faster in order to tap into that potential. We know the world's leadership lacks diverse representation, but we have very little research as to tell us why. And thus, we don't really know how to patch it. Still, tons of people have opinions on why this is the case. And here we're truly at the core of unconscious discrimination and stereotypes. It's an imprecise and unclear relationship between cause and effect, a relationship that best case can be referred to as myths, worst case prejudice, even though they appear to be objective truths for many. Now, one myth is that we're gender blind. And I would like to introduce you to Hans and Hannah. This was a study originally conducted at Harvard about 20 years ago, but it was repeated in Norway among students in 2015. Now, the case study portrayed a very successful leader and asked 100 students to assess the leader. But what they didn't know was that 50% of them were reading the case study where the leader was called Hans. The other 50% was reading the case study where the leader was called Hannah. Now, this was an exact identical case. The students said they had no gender bias in them. How many think that they actually assessed them differently? Well, the students who read about Hans thought he was a good leader. They would like to have a beer with him, have him as a mentor. He was a fine dad. While the other half, they viewed Hannah as less of a leader. She wasn't particularly likable. She was bossy, and she was a worse parent. Now remember, Hans and Hannah were assessed by master students in the most gender equal country in the world, proving just how deeply bias and stereotypes affects our perceptions, our decisions, and ultimately the makeup of our workforce. And another myth is that we're colorblind. The Hans and Hannah study is a classic example of how we think that we're gender blind, but we actually aren't, and how we unconsciously judge people differently based on their stereotype. And the very first myth that we need to debunk is that we don't consider people just based on their skills. In 2012, Norwegian researchers from the Department of Social Research and FAFO sent out 1,800 false job applications for real job advertisements. The applications were sent in pairs with equally qualified candidates, but where one had a Western name and the other a non-Western name. The researchers found that the probability of being called in for an interview was reduced by 25% for applicants with a non-Western name. Now, we like to think that we're colorblind, but we do unconsciously discriminate based on ethnic background, even superficial information about a person's characteristics, be it ethnicity, skin color, age, body size, initiates immediate associations about personality traits and skills that can make it really hard to reach through the eye of the needle in a hiring process. Despite what we think, by the way, equality is in no way about to dawn on us. Many people are going to tell you that the current divide is just a lag from the past, and that we should give it time and then it will all work out. But that's not the truth, and the numbers haven't just stagnated. In certain areas, they're actually moving backwards. In 2017, the yearly World Economic Forum report found that gender equality actually worsened for the first time in 10 years. Last year, the report adjusted the number of years it would take for us to reach gender parity to 257 years. So my passion is technology. And very often, audiences ask me, what technological solution should we implement in order to survive this next technological revolution? But a new technology is not the solution. Tech is the easy part. It's humans, unpredictable and diverse as we are. That is the difficult part. And if we want to be the leaders who lead that change, we need to reinvent the way we approach and solve problems. We need to accelerate the pace of our learning, and we need to have a relentless pursuit to understand the needs of our users. And that can't be done with a technology. It can only be done by having more people, more perspectives in our leadership and in our teams. According to a growing body of research, diversity is not just the right thing to do. It's actually the smart thing to do. In 2017, McKinsey examined more than 1,000 public companies in 12 different countries, and they found that the companies that had the most ethnically diverse executive teams were 33% more likely to outperform their peers on profitability. A recent report from BCG actually found that companies who score the highest on diversity also drive 38% more of their revenues from innovative products and services compared to other companies over the past 3 years. Another report from Creative Equals found that diverse teams are actually 45% happier and 48% more likely to stay at a company. And the BCG report also finds that diversity has an especially positive impact in complex companies. And in today's world, complexity is less of a choice, it's a necessity. Companies face so many risks, they can't choose to just rely on one source of revenue. So, diversity is good for business, but lack of diversity can also have some consequences. I would like to take you through a few of the technology products that have failed due to a lack of diversity. Let's start with voice recognition. The very first software was developed many decades ago, and the primary target at the time was actually secretaries, who at the time were mostly women. But again, the product team consisted of men who tested on their own voice, and when the product came to market, it had very, very many difficulties recognizing female voices. And just a note, voice recognition still works a lot worse for women than it does for men. Or take Apple. In 2014, they were very proud. They launched this new health app. It was going to measure everything that we cared about, such as the blood pressure, our steps, nutrition. However, they did forget to measure one of the most important health parameters for 50% of the population, namely the menstrual cycle. Or take emojis. Kind of a funny one, but up until 2016, girls actually were not represented in any kind of profession in emoji land other than bride and princess. Now, they found room for a coconut fried shrimp, yet girls were constrained to traditional, outdated stereotypes. But there are many of these examples, but in a world that's increasingly global, technological, driven by algorithms using sometimes biased and historical data, diversity is actually essential and fundamental to avoid reinforcing our biases, flawed decision-making, and worst tendencies overall. Let's take AI as an example. These are 9 of the leading AI companies globally, and within these, a few 100,000 work with AI. Now, on a global scale, that is very little. And even though we talk extensively about its tremendous power, we don't address the fact that there are so few people deciding the data sets and algorithms that are going to make decisions on behalf of the entire world, a world that very likely has different perspectives and needs as themselves. I'll give you an example. One of the widely used data sets to train these facial recognition algorithms consist of 75% men and 80% white people. A researcher at MIT found that the image recognition systems of IBM and Microsoft and Facebook and so on are 99% likely to accurately identify a white man, while the error rate of recognizing a black woman is actually 35%. Now, Google in 2015 notoriously came under fire for labeling a black man as a gorilla in their photo app, which uses AI to categorize images. And this failure is not just a slip. It's incredibly demeaning. And it's also indicative of a bigger systematic failure, suggesting just how badly we're doing as architects of the early stages of what is going to become hugely complex and powerful systems. And consider these kinds of failures in the future. Imagine how they'll scale as we hand over more decision-making to AI systems in everything from our insurance, to our loans, to our hiring practices, and our self-driving cars. Because lack of diversity has actually had deadly consequences. The very first airbags killed more women and kids. The product team, again, consisted of men who used their own weight and their own height when they tested the consequence of these impacts, and they ignorantly ignore the consequence that it would have on a smaller body. Now, they were nearly 50% more likely to kill women and kids. This is not acceptable. And it's a complete abdication of responsibility. And these kinds of examples are vast. And as leaders of the future, we have a responsibility to build a future where history does not repeat itself. Studying technology and media made me realize how incredibly fast and fundamental technology is shaping our society. But it also made me realize another thing. My passion for technology is not necessarily rooted in the overwhelming sphere of nodes and algorithms. My passion for technology lies in the immense opportunities that technology has to empower us as individuals and to make a positive difference in the world. Technology has democratized fundamental building blocks in society, such as education, communication, information, and through the internet, and perhaps particularly social media. We've been empowered as individuals everywhere to use our voice to make an impact. My co-founder and I have worked with digital campaigns to address unconscious bias and gender stereotypes in society for many years. And in 2017, we were invited to the UN Women Conference in New York, and the executive director's words stuck with us. Every generation has a mission to fulfill or betray, and ours is to achieve gender equality. So in 2018, we decided, okay, it's time. We want to quit our job. We're going to empower the people. We're going to include the many, many voices that have stories to tell, and we want to leverage technology to accelerate the quest for equality globally. And that is what led us to start Equalitycheck. Equalitycheck leverages technology to create radical transparency and catalyze equality. Simply said, it's a platform for anonymous reviews about equality in the workplace, or simply said, a TripAdvisor for equal opportunity in the workplace. So in short, anyone can leave a review about your workplace, And you can research other companies and see how employees rate the things that matter, like opportunity, unconscious bias, work-life balance. And you can also see the responses based on your unique traits. So you can see how people like you experience that exact workplace. So for example, you can see and filter on gender, ethnicity, age, religion, sexual identity, and so on. By leaving a review, we add transparency to the workplace and we offer companies valuable insights as to how they can improve, with the ultimate goal of creating equal opportunity and diverse workplaces globally. Because we believe that transparency is the key to accountability and change. We also aim to be at the forefront of mapping global changes and empowering the people. Now, the last year, 2020, has been dramatic, to say the least. And when Corona broke out, we were one of the first to launch a survey mapping how the pandemic affects discrimination in the workplace, in which we presented the results together with the Minister of Gender Equality in Norway and in Sweden. And during Pride, we teamed up with different LGBTQ organizations to see how much effort is there really behind all the rainbows in their different marketing. What are they actually doing to improve the workplace for the LGBTQI community? And in the wake of Black Lives Matter, we've partnered up with several different organizations doing great things for ethnic minorities in Norway. And our goal is to get more data and more transparency on how we discriminate based on ethnicity in our workplace, with the one big goal, which is to improve. Everything that we do is led by our values. We promise honesty, and our lifelong promise to our users is anonymity. We're fact and research-based, we're inclusive because equality benefits everyone, and perhaps most importantly, we're positive and we're solutions-oriented. We aim to shine light on the ones who do well and support the ones who need help. But more than just to provide insights, we also actually provide solutions. Because we have worked with this for several years, we found that as there is very much research on this problem, there's actually a huge divide to the research on the actual solutions. And even though it's important to acknowledge that there is a problem out there, it's time to get over the why and start asking how, which is why Equality Check is working really closely with research institutions and corporations on a mission to find and validate what could become one of the world's first solutions on how to increase diversity in the workplace, and we want to provide them globally through technology. In the past 6 years, my co-founder and I have had several campaigns reaching millions of people. We've published a best-selling book, been featured in hundreds of media, and become partners to C-level executives and the Norwegian government. And we've been invited to speak at more than hundreds of events nationally and internationally, including the UN. We see the attention that we're receiving nationally and internationally as a sign that the world is hungry for this transparency. I'm sure you're all well aware that everywhere you look in the world, leaders are scrambling to find the next technological solution to get them on the right path. As an alumni and now faculty at Singularity University in Silicon Valley, I'm very well versed in the fact that we have the technology to solve humanity's global grand challenges. And that's also why I know that technology is nothing without people developing it or setting the vision for where it should go. Because the world's problems don't exist because there's a lack of technology. They were created by people and they have to be solved by people. And people is everyone. Our world is going to look fundamentally different in 10 years. But in order to create the world that we long for, let's do everything that we can to create transparency necessary to accelerate the process. The world is demanding transparency and it's hungry for change. But change is not going to happen by itself. And our belief is that we need to shift the power dynamics from the top to the ground up, because millions of voices are hard to ignore. So what are you waiting for? Join us on our mission to change the world. Equality Check It.
Thank you very much for the impact you have on our world and, of course, on the participants of our conference. Our next speaker has won multiple awards and prizes in the field of leadership, education, and social entrepreneurship, including the Skoll Prize for Social Entrepreneurship and the Clinton Prize for Global Citizenship. She is the co-author of the world's famous Escuela Nueva model and the founder and director of the Fundación Escuela Nueva. Please welcome the one and only Vicky Colbert.
My name is Vicky Colbert. I am the founder and director of Fundación Escuela Nueva. Originally, I'm a sociologist, but I did my graduate work in sociology of education and education in Stanford University. But one of the most important things is I have worked with teachers all my life. Especially, I recognized that teachers are the agents of change, and you have to work with them. Escuela Nueva, which means new school in Spanish, it's a proven solution to improve quality education, to reduce inequity, to strengthen citizenship and 21st century skills. It's one of the longest bottom-up innovations of the developing world that's still being sustained. Here we say it's the story of Cinderella. We started with the most invisible, the most vulnerable rural schools of Colombia, and we ended up talking about the school of the future. This is why I say it's the story of Cinderella. Necessity is the mother of innovation. And for us, this was crucial because all the problems we had forced us to rethink everything, the way of learning, the role of the teacher, but we were forced to think systemically. I want to highlight, I always compare the education sector with the health sector. If we bring a doctor from 100 years ago into a hospital today, that doctor is totally lost. Everything has changed. But if we bring a teacher from 100 years ago to a school today, even an elite school, that teacher is not so lost because everything has changed except the way of learning. And this is one of the key messages of Escuela Nueva. We had to think systemically from the outset, and we had to transform complexity into simple, manageable action so that we could have an innovation that could be scalable, replicable, and cost-effective. We wanted from the outset to impact national policy. We started as a local innovation and gradually became a national policy in Colombia, reaching more than 20,000 children. The origin, how did we start? Colombia, like the rest of Latin America, when we started more than 30 years ago, did not offer complete basic primary education in rural areas of Colombia because there were so many invisible schools, multi-grade schools where they exist in low-density populations where one teacher has to handle simultaneously several grades. As we say, necessity is the mother of innovation, and here we transformed a necessity in a positive pedagogy. It's a proven solution. It shifted the focus from teacher-centered to child-centered. We wanted an active participatory learning, personalized learning. Not everybody learns the same thing at the same time. Cooperative learning, we wanted children to learn through dialogue and interaction. Now, these ideas are not new in the philosophy of education, but we wanted to make them viable, and we had to transform all this complexity so that any teacher could do it. From the outset, we had to think systemically. If we wanted to really take this change, this paradigm shift from transmission of knowledge to social construction of knowledge, we had from the outset to think systemically. We wanted a more active child-centered pedagogy, which is not new in the philosophy of education. We wanted a new role of the teacher as a guide, a facilitator, a mentor, and especially we wanted families and community to participate in the learning process. The important dimension of this innovation that has become a national policy in Colombia and in many other countries is that there have been decades of research behind. The first UNESCO study, comparative international study of Latin America, Colombia and Cuba were the only countries where rural education outperformed urban schools, except the mega cities. The second dimension, the World Bank selected it as one of the 3 innovations worldwide that had successfully impacted national policies. The University of London published an evaluation on analyzing the impact of Escuela Nueva on peaceful social interaction of children in Colombia. And this is extremely important for us. And last but not least, the National Planning Institution of Colombia, la Planeación Nacional, did a study demonstrating how it reduces inequity. Escuela Nueva compensates for socioeconomic inequalities. However, innovations are very vulnerable to political and administrative changes. So the persons that we co-authored the Escuela Nueva model, we organized and founded Escuela Nueva Foundation, a Colombian NGO, because we wanted to contribute to the quality of the implementation of the model in Escuela Nueva. And secondly, we wanted to continue developing new dimensions and going beyond what we had done, new developments. So the first thing we did was also adapt it to urban areas in Colombia, Escuela Activa Urbana, having wonderful results also. But of course, we have focused more on the rural areas. The second dimension is, since there were many displaced children caused by armed conflict, we adapted the Escuela Nueva to Escuela Nueva learning circles. And at the moment, we are working with Escuela Nueva learning circles, especially with migrant children coming from both Colombia and Venezuela. Fundación Escuela Nueva, our NGO, has also contributed to the international dimension of Escuela Nueva. We have inspired educational reforms worldwide, and we have reached more than 7 million children in many countries, working mainly through the governments. This is very important to highlight. But for example, I want to highlight Vietnam. Vietnam is a country that took the Colombian model to scale. It took it to all the rural areas of Vietnam, and a recent impact evaluation came out of the World Bank demonstrating very positive results. Another dimension that the Escuela Nueva Foundation has promoted internationally is the 21st century skills. This is something we have incorporated most recently. The 21st century skills in the ways of thinking, in the ways of working, in the ways of living in the world. And especially these 21st century skills are learning to learn, learning to think critically, learning to criticize and accept constructive criticism, learning to lead processes, learning to take initiatives, but most important of all, learning to work in teams. And I think this is one of the strengths of Escuela Nueva, that incorporates the 21st century skills, because we have changed the act of learning from teacher-centered to child-centered, the time of learning, incorporating flexibility. Anybody can learn if they have the time and the flexibility, so we wanted schools to adapt to the children's needs. The act, the time, and the space. Learning is not a place, it's an activity. So we have incorporated all these dimensions, and this is why I wanted to highlight, as I said at the beginning, it is the story of Cinderella. We started with the most vulnerable schools, but we ended up being a school of tomorrow. So what are the takeaways of the Escuela Nueva story? First, yes, it is possible to improve the quality of education and the relevance of education in the developing world. Second, more of the same is not enough. Just expanding current educational system is not enough. We need this paradigm shift, which is nothing new in the philosophy of education, as I mentioned, from teacher-centered to child-centered. From the outset, you have to think systemically. If you want to have impact and become a national policy, you have to think systemically from the outset. If you want a more child-centered, a more participatory child, you need a new type of teacher, you need a new relationship with the parents and the community, and of course a new role of the administrators. Another thing we have learned is learning goes beyond academic achievement. It combines the heart and your brain. So this is important, the social emotional learning. We've been measuring self-esteem of children. If children improve their self-esteem from the beginning, they will flourish. This is very crucial. So we have incorporated both cognitive developments and social emotional developments. Another new dimension is that you need a new type of pedagogy. And technology can trigger change. But just introducing computers in the classroom without changing your pedagogy can perpetuate at a higher cost a traditional technique. You need a new pedagogy in place for the introduction of new technologies. And last but not least, I already mentioned it, you need to work with governments for reaching impact and coverage, but you need public-private partnerships and the role of civil society for two key words: quality and sustainability.
Thank you for your impact and particularly your unquenchable optimism. Olga Shkabardnya from the SCR office at the Rosatom Corporation will tell her diversity story. What experience made Olga rethink her understanding of life? And how does this assist her in organizing volunteer and charitable projects that help thousands of people and find solutions to critical problems related to health, work, and the environment?
Hello everyone! So the topic of diversity and inclusion is really wide. So today I would like to share with you a few stories which significantly changed my own attitude to the subject. And also I will share the experience and the vision of Rosatom, what we do to make a significant change in people's life. So the first story is about the agers. In the end of the past century, the American engineers faced the problem that the majority of the pilots can't fit the dimensions of the airplane cabins and feel very uncomfortable after flights. So after making a kind of research, they found out that the design of the cabin was based on the very remote standards, and probably in next 80 years, the average American pilots just became bigger. And based on the statistical research, they made a new cabin which met the dimensions of the average man. But during the first trials, they faced the same problem. What was the reason? All the pilots agreed that the new design still was uncomfortable, and a famous American designer found the solution a few years after and released formula which, in my opinion, describes the way to make the possible 100% inclusive society. Then the average, designed for the ages. And now many things in the world are designed for the average. Average education, IQ test, infrastructure, clothes, and almost everything. So for many, many years, the society was artificially trying to make standards for everything. So inclusivity is not just about equal opportunities. It's about going out of frame and widen the ages. And this is the first lesson I learned. How the stereo of ages can profit the business. Mind some figures. The global research says that 89% of ads can reach the target audience. Why? Because people say it's not a story about them. About what? About whom the stories are about then? So McKinsey research says that their inclusivity really make an impact on business results. So the people you don't have in your team is a profit you will never get for your business. Just mind that. And it means that the similar people can't come up with the idea beyond their own life experience. And it's very clear and it's very evident. So these kind of people can generate the ideas that can change the world. So, if you want to have a healthy, sustainable societies and sustainable businesses, we should consider everyone as a part of a team. It was the first story. And the second story is about the people who can make a change. So I was really blessed in my life to have a friend who was absolutely unique person. At the age of 20, he was diagnosed with the cancer, unfortunately. And after a long fight, his arm was amputated. And in this very moment, he faced the reality of disabled people and in the way the society treats them. Thus, he came to the idea that the global goal in life is to heal the world, which is not really ready to inclusivity and diversity at all. And he established a company which was promoting the ideas that people with disabilities have some extra power, and it worked perfectly for the kids who felt abandoned and lost their hope to go back to their normal life. He called them cyborgs, the society of X-Men, like in a movie. And I saw how that kids changed their attitude from self-neglecting to the dignity and strong sense of community power. This company was promoting the ideas of social entrepreneurship, equality and power of technologies, smart prostheses. Their activities changed the life of hundreds of people and inspired even more. So the main idea he promoted was that inclusivity is not about inclusion of disabled people. It's about the inclusion of the whole society into the new paradigm without standards, where people are not divided by certain communities or categories. It's the society where the main value is a unique personality of each of us, of you and you. And there is a second lesson I learned, and I really hope that this story will inspire you to make a change, to change your own attitude to people around you, and to the role of the business, which sometimes can make the precious contribution to save millions of lives. And I guess I should say that this brave man unfortunately died last year. And I hope that the struggle for inclusive society he started will be driven by people like you, all the people who participate in today's event and many others dedicated to this topic. It was the second story. And the third story is about the impact. So in Russia, the topic of inclusivity will be in the main headlines very, very soon. For past 5 years, many non-profit organizations tried new approaches to go public, to go social media and to central television. And celebrities are trying to give a new light and make a mind-changing approaches to give a new vision of the inclusivity problem. So last year, the big festival was organized in Moscow. It was called Humans for Humans. And many specific events are also organized in Moscow due to their Moscow government. And the large companies also are making the big step forward to build up an inclusive society. So Rosatom is not an exception, and I consider it can take a leadership position in this way. And if we talk about Rosatom's CSR policy in general, in Russia it covers not just 90 cities where we have some productive capacities or offices, but trying to expand our presence and our social impact across the whole country. For example, Rosatom Smart Cities program integrates new urban technologies and brings new teaching methods to regional schools and kindergartens, thus giving the equal access to high-quality education to all the 200 people, 200 kids. And more than 5,000 corporate volunteers participate in 300 social activities on an annual basis. And if we talk about programs related to inclusivity and diversity, we have around 50 per year, and I think that it's a really good number. Of course, we have CSR and volunteering projects aimed specifically to socialize disabled people, homeless people, cerebral palsy kids and adults, troubled teens and people with serious medical conditions. And I want to share with you a few of them. So the first example I want to give you is about the kids who are undergoing cancer treatment in the hospitals. So our corporate volunteers organize creative workshops to develop their motor skills and photography skills. However, positive emotions help them to be an integral part of our society. In Krasnoyarsk city, our volunteers organized two projects. First one was the creation of the database with the photos of the orphans, the database of their cities. Due to this project, the kids improved their skills in photo and video production, and few of them found a new home, which is really great results I'm really proud of. The second one was about the environmental education for orphans and kids who stay at home because of some serious medical treatment. Together with the employees, they cleaned up the territories and learned the best practices of sustainable consumption. Also, we have an educational project. The volunteers work with orphans with the purpose to increase their interest in nuclear energy and working with professionals in the future. Also, we have a volunteer project aimed to socialize homeless people. Company employees study the circumstances that lead to their homelessness, as well as the motives for changing their lives. They try to organize documents recovery, provide temporary accommodation, and help them to receive some job, help them with employment. Also, we are proud to refer a special project for elders. Namely, we have digital trainings, which teach seniors to use modern devices. We have legal consultancy, some fitness programs, cultural events, special corporate celebrations, art and craft sections. So, also we have the gardening and agricultural workshops, which helps these old people to socialize. And of course, all of us would understand that the seniors felt the lack of interest for their life experience, knowledge and talent. And they need communications more than every one of us, even more than young people. Another project I want to share with you is the project which was created especially for the kids with cerebral palsy. The whole directory in social media was created to promote best practices and life hacks for the parents who face this problem for the first time. So, in Sarov also we're working on a very new idea of the creation of the whole cluster for socialization of children with disabilities. Within the project, a whole system of special measures will be established: rehabilitation, cultural and sport event, assistance and the place of residence, and of course the adaptation to urban environment. environment. The company also planned to use new technologies to help people in need. A team of volunteers created an app for the deaf and hard-hearing people. This is the IT solution which will translate text into sign language. Also, we work on socialization of deaf teens. The events are aimed to inform about the possible career perspective in their hometowns, provide their teens in stranger school or university. The teens will have an opportunity to meet company representatives, successful businessmen, and even celebrities. A social career guidance project for troubled teenagers also been launched in one of the biggest cities, Nizhny Novgorod. So the employees try to explain what is right or wrong on their own example and motivate them to get a real job in the future. So, talking about women and girls' inclusion, I would like to highlight a few projects. So, in December of 2018, we established a professional women community called Women in Nuclear Industry, which includes today more than 200 women from 70 regions of the country. Now we work closely with the Federation Council within the framework of enlightening the educational activities for young people and for the people who already work in some big companies around Moscow and around Russia. So, giving girls and young women the chance to pursue their technical STEM majors is critical. So we work a lot with the kids, promoting engineering trainings for future engineers from kindergartens and 400 schools and 250 universities across the whole country, and provide the equal start for boys and girls. Also, we are trying to popularize the engineering professions among girls in our student engineering competitions. We have a lot of them. So, I told just about few projects we work on in the inclusivity and diversity field. And after all, our goal as a company is to become the best company in unlocking the people's potential. And this is the first lesson I learned. Each of us can make a small step to contribute to the inclusive society and bring people back to their normal lives. It's not a secret that a huge number of discoveries that changed the world were made precisely by non-standard people who didn't fit the general framework. It's not customary to talk about this, but the majority of brilliant IT specialists are the people that society calls autists. And one of the key leaders of sustainable development concept, Sir Richard Branson, is dyslexic, and he was proud to talk about that quite openly. And unfortunately, we often underestimate people and events around us, while being restricted by our own stereotypes. We just need to overstep them. We must change our attitude and give the world a chance for the better future. Doesn't matter where we live. People and communities around the world have their essentially same problems, and we should solve it together. All members of society should have a voice and equal opportunities. It's everything I want to talk to you today, and I hope it really inspires you to some new project and for some achievements. Thank you for your attention, and see you later. Bye.
I'm so grateful to all our experts for the opportunity we have to show how your unique talent and inclusiveness is becoming the norm across the world. As you know, our conference gives a voice to absolutely everyone. Dear viewers, I'm announcing a 5-minute break.